Well, first of all, thank you all for joining us. We're really excited to do this kind of annually, a little bit of an introduction to the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program and highlight really how you as applicants can get started here this summer. And as you may or may not know, the solicitation for this year actually will not come out until later this summer. So we're going to highlight a lot of information today to help you really take the first steps, because our goal is to give you as much time as possible to put together the strongest application you can. And we're going to highlight all of the ways that you can start to take those steps today. To start off though, a little bit of introductions. My name is Sam Lake. I'm the Assistant Director of Research Communication that I get to share a title with Kelly here in the Office of Graduate and Postdoctoral Affairs. And just to give you a little quick background to myself, prior to coming to UVA, about a calendar year ago, I actually spent 7 years running similar graduate research fellowship programs here in the state of Virginia, running panel reviews, developing the evaluation criteria, and really conducting a lot of interviews for similar fellowship programs. And Kelly?
And I'm Kelly Oman. I'm also Assistant Director of Research Communication, as Sam said. I also started about a year ago. I previously had worked in an academic medical center where I worked with people working on all different types of science on their writing and presentations and all of that. My own background is in the humanities. I am super familiar with the GRFP though, and I like to say that I'm a good audience for your draft materials because as we'll talk about in future sessions, the people that you're writing for won't always be directly in your field, so I can give you some good insight into what's translating and what's not. But yeah, we're really here to support you, and we're going to talk a little bit more at the end about all of the stuff that we're going to be doing to offer that support, and then the other folks around UVA who are available to you.
So today's workshop really has 5 goals. Like I said, we want to introduce what the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program is, really highlight NSF's goals with this fellowship itself. We're going to go over some of the important information, including eligibility. We're going to break down the application and talk about all the different pieces, the page limits, what you really need to capture within each, and even really think about how to approach some of those sections based on the evaluation or the review criteria. And then finally, as Kelly just mentioned, we'll start to hit on some of those resources, things that you can take advantage of over the summer and even into the fall semester to really make sure that you're ready to submit your application. And you've got nice kind of established timelines and milestones between now and then. So the National Science Foundation has actually been kind of refining its goal or the purpose of this fellowship program kind of a little bit by a little bit each and every year. And recently they kind of rewrote this purpose statement a little bit. So I'll just kind of highlight the important aspect of it. And it is to ensure the quality, the vitality, and the diversity of the scientific and engineering workforce within the United States. And like many things, the National Science Foundation kind of has 2 primary factors, 2 weights that they use within this. And you'll see that within the evaluation criteria as well. The first is to select, recognize, and financially support individuals who demonstrate potential to be really successful in their career, to be high-achieving scientists and engineers. And they're doing that at this stage in your academic career, and they're envisioning, your future potential in many ways. Now, I'm going to say this a couple times throughout the presentation, but the purpose of this fellowship is really focused on you as an individual. The research that you're proposing is secondary. They really want to see the potential, even through the research plan, in investing in you. And that's the intellectual merit side of the fellowship itself. And then there's the broadening participation side. So not separate, but the other really important piece and element to the GRFP. And that's broadening participation in STEM of underrepresented groups. And they are defining that in some ways as including women, minorities, persons with disabilities, and veterans. And they define this really broadly in different aspects of NSF. And that's the broadening or the broader impact side of the GRFP. So why should you apply? Well, it's a very prestigious fellowship. It's probably something you've heard about through undergrad or since you've been here at UVA in grad school. In terms of an award, it is one of the highest awards that's actually given out for a graduate research fellowship. The total award period is 5 years, but really the financial piece of that, the support for the fellows themselves, is 3 years in duration, or at least 3 years worth of funding. And that funding is almost $50,000 per year. It's $37,000 in stipend support per year, and another $12,000 that goes towards your tuition that essentially is paid towards the university. There's a lot of professional development opportunities throughout the application to the fellowship side of these awards. So for fellows that are actually awarded a GRFP, there's an opportunity to do an intern program, and that's a non-academic internship program. Typically, that's done with federal agencies. And additionally, what Kelly and I look at these opportunities a lot in is actually an opportunity to practice your grant writing skills, to actually kind of refine those, to hear and receive feedback and constructive feedback from not just us, but near peer mentors that we'll talk about, and also faculty members that have served as reviewers in the past. This is an opportunity to get a lot of perspective and insight on how you really craft a compelling application from a whole range of people across the university. As I mentioned, it's prestigious, and there's a number of ways that we see applicants being able to leverage that. Fellowships, as well as honorable mentions that will go on your resume or your CV in the future. This is something that's recognized by people within academia and also future employers, internship coordinators, and fellowship leads. So this is something that really will stand out on your application for a future position. And then, as I've noted a little bit earlier too, it is awarded to you. It's an individual award. So it has flexibility. And even though you're going to propose a research plan, it's not necessarily tied to that specific research plan. If you decide to change course, if you have a new opportunity emerge, something in your discipline changes and you decide that you need to use a different method or you want to explore a new question, you have flexibility within this fellowship program to make those changes and to pursue the research questions that you really want to ask. So it's unrestricted in another way, which is there's no service requirement. So just because you receive the award, you don't actually have to do a service requirement after completion.
Okay, so who is eligible for this? This is one of the most confusing aspects of this fellowship, and something that Sam and I get questions about all the time. So in the email I sent you with the link for today's event, I included the eligibility, the NSF's eligibility quiz. So you can go through and put in your situation and it'll tell you if you're eligible. If you did that and still don't know if you're eligible, no worries, that happens all the time. Please just reach out to me and Sam with questions and we can help work out whether or not you're eligible. Sometimes even we have trouble, but the basics are that you need to be a US citizen, national, or permanent resident. So that's the big one that that excludes a lot of people. So make sure that that is you. You need to intend to enroll or be enrolled in a research-based master's or doctoral degree program in an eligible field of study in STEM or STEM education. So if you are a current UVA grad student, then you fall into this category, as long as you're in these eligible fields of study, which we'll go over in a minute. Note that this does not include joint degree programs like master or MD, PhD, or JD, PhD programs. You need to have never earned a doctoral or terminal degree in any field. You can't have applied to the GRFP while enrolled in a graduate degree program, and I'll go over that in more detail in a second. You can't have won and accepted the GRFP previously, and you can't be an NSF employee. And Sam put in the chat there a link to the full eligibility criteria, so you can actually go through and check for yourself against the other things that we didn't mention here. So as I said, you can only apply once as a grad student. So that is in your first or second year of grad school. If you are a first year taking courses this summer, you have to apply this year. So let me explain that a little bit. Some programs at UVA enroll their students in the summer before their first year starts, so that they can get some early research experience, and the enrollment means that they can be paid during the summer. That's not a ton of programs, so that probably isn't you, but if you're wondering or worried, contact us and we can figure that out. You need to have never earned a master's or professional degree in any field or completed more than one academic year in a graduate degree granting program, unless you are returning to grad study after an interruption of 2 or more consecutive years immediately preceding the application deadline, and you're not enrolled in a graduate degree program at the application deadline. So if you're currently a grad student and you have previously earned a master's or professional degree, then you are not eligible. I'm understanding that, right, Sam?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, see, it can get confusing. Undergraduate seniors pursuing a master's degree simultaneously with the bachelor's degree are limited to one application to the GRFP. So basically, over your lifespan, you can apply twice, once as an undergraduate and once as a grad student. So if you are applying as an undergraduate senior while in a joint master's bachelor's degree program, you can only apply once. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and
again, we're able to answer any questions.
Yeah, we are happy to. Please reach out to us if you do have any questions. I just want to reiterate that part of if, for instance, last year you were enrolled last summer, because the application is due in the fall semester, by the time you would come back around to this fall in October when these are due, you would actually have been enrolled as a graduate student for more than a calendar year, which would make you not eligible to apply this fall. So we just want to highlight, if you do start, and you will have on your transcript courses in a summer semester as a graduate student, reach out to us because we want to confirm before you put in a lot of time and effort for this particular fellowship program that you are in fact eligible.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Eligible fields of study broadly are STEM and STEM education fields. These are the big ones: chemistry, computer and information sciences and engineering, geosciences, life sciences, materials research, mathematical sciences, physics and astronomy, psychology, social sciences, including economics, STEM education, and learning research. And these are categories or fields that might not necessarily line up with what your degree program is called. But if your research falls under one of these, then you are eligible. So again, if you have questions about that, reach out to us and we can determine whether your research is eligible. And you can see a complete list of fields with subfields in the 2022 solicitation. As Sam said, the one for this year isn't released yet, but generally there aren't a lot of changes between years in the list of fields. And one thing to note is that this does not, the eligible fields of study does not typically include clinical research or research with primarily disease-related goals, because the idea is that that type of research falls under the purview of the NIH and not the NSF. Okay, yeah, so because we don't have the solicitation for 2023 yet, we don't know the due dates for the application, but we can kind of guess based on previous years. And we do know that typically the applications are due at 5 p.m. local time. So whatever time you put into the system or whatever location you put into the system, it'll be 5 p.m. that time, that location in mid-October. So one thing to note is that it's not the same due date for every field. They're staggered, as you can see here. In 2022, the due dates were the week of October 17th. And It doesn't always break down like this, like life sciences doesn't always come first. So make sure that you pay attention to that when you are finding out your deadlines. But basically we can kind of guess that it might be around the same time, but you want to make sure that you're working plenty early so that you have your application ready in time to submit.
And just keep in mind that the application portal is going to be overwhelmed the day of the deadlines. That's actually one of the reasons they do space this out. And you don't want to be in the situation where connectivity issues, even though they're not on your end of the application portal, are causing you any stress or any undue burden of trying to submit your final application material. So we strongly encourage you, at least the week before, have all your materials uploaded, and if you can, submit it well in advance, several days.
And we do have a question in the chat about eligibility. We'll get to that at the end. And if you have to hop off, just email us and we can answer that. So what does the application actually include? So these are the elements of the application that you're going to be putting together. The first thing is an actual online portal where you fill out all of your information, as if you're applying to a job, the same like resume, CV content that you would put in, personal information, education information, work and research experience, your proposed field of study, any honors or publications that you have. And one thing to note is that this is actually the first thing that reviewers see when they're reviewing your application. So you don't want to skip those fields of work and research experience or honors or publications. You want to make sure that you're filling that out as much as you can, because when a reviewer is looking at your materials, you might mention that stuff in one of the statements, but when it's just right up front and we can see, wow, this person has a lot of experience, or this person has a couple of things that really stand out in their experience, that kind of sets up the reviewer to already be impressed by you, and they're looking forward to reading more about that when they get to the statements. The personal relevant background and future goals statement is a 3-page document that we're going to talk about in a second, but this is where you talk about yourself, your background, what you're wanting to do with your life and career. And then there is the graduate research statement. This is 2 pages. This is where you write a proposal for your research. And then you can have up to 5 reference letters requested through the system, but only 3 will actually be counted in the application. So if you put in 3 people and 3 people submit letters, that's perfect. If you put in 5 people, you can rank them and say, I want these 3, or I want them in this order. So if the top 3 submit, that's great, they'll be included. But if one of those top 3 doesn't submit their letter, then one of the other 2 of the 5 will be included. So I think depending on who you have as reference letter writers, that can be a good tactic in case you have a flaky advisor or something. Just use that wisely. And then you'll also include your graduate and undergraduate transcripts.
And just a note, because it aligns a little bit with the question we just received, if there's a question about eligibility, the program officers at NSF are going to look at if you were enrolled in a course that is listed on your graduate transcript in the summer of 2022. This is actually the application element they would look to cross-check your eligibility.
So that personal statement, that's what I'm going to call it for shorthand. But the things that are important here are the background, relevant background, and future goals. So you're looking at where you've been and where you're going. And in this document, you can either just list all the things from your CV and tell us what you did, or even better, you can tell us a story about that experience and how it all fits together into a coherent narrative. So we greatly prefer the latter tactic because it tells us not only what you did, but why and how it's shaped you and how it's shaped your goals. So you want to think of what experiences, both personal and professional, contributed to your motivation and preparation for pursuing a STEM career. So that's the relevant part of this, is how do these experiences fit into what you want to do professionally? and how have they motivated and prepared you? So these are previous research experiences, experiences in industry or professional experiences, work experiences, volunteer stuff, any number of things. And you want to tell us those things that you've done, but focus on why. Why did you do them? It's not enough to say, I volunteered at so-and-so organization and did this and that. Tell us what motivated you to do that and how it's changed you and motivated you to do whatever's next. So use those experiences that have informed your career and motivated you today and show us, don't just tell us. So really create a story there. Tell us what projects you worked on and what specifically was your contribution. That's what we want to hear about, what you did in these different experiences, what you learned or gained from these experiences, and articulate the importance of each experience and how it contributes to your role in the scientific community. So put yourself within this community. It's not just you doing things for the sake of it or doing things for the sake of your career, but how does this fit with how you want to be part of the scientific community that you are engaging with? Tell us why what you did was important to you and how it motivates you to what you want to do next. And then, of course, the future goals. So what are you working towards? What are your career aspirations? How have these experiences in the past shaped those future goals? So again, kind of creating a full narrative where everything fits together and contributes to this idea of who you want to be.
And it's normal at the beginning of your graduate program. You might not know exactly what you want to do after you finish grad school, but it is really helpful for the reviewers to have one or two things that you have in mind that you're working towards. That will help them see how all the pieces fit together of what you're proposing. And it's important that you kind of share what those goals are with your letter writers, because you don't want your personal statement to actually be contradictory of what your advisor's thoughts on where your career is leading you to be different. So make sure that you share that information about what your future goals are and what you're doing with your letter writers, so that all of these different application elements line up and it's clear that there's lots of communication there and they're all championing to get you to that point. Now, as much as the personal goal statement is really a communication test, being 3 pages and summarizing kind of your past, your present, and your future goals, the research plan is probably even a little bit harder, because we're really used to writing about our research in kind of a long format. And in this case, NSF is requiring you to submit your research plan in 2 pages. So when I say it's a communication test, it really is. You have to think about the information that the reviewers need to understand about your research, why it's important, why it's relevant, also the methods that you're going to be using, and then the impact to the broader community. So just want to think about, with 2 pages, how you package all that together. And that's an area that your advisor and your lab mates and other people within the UVA community can help support, including Kelly and myself. So you're thinking about a research plan that is going to be a 3-year research plan, because it does have to happen within the fellowship period. So while your PhD research might be a 5 or a 6-year project, you're going to want to carve off a piece that you can highlight in this proposal that's achievable within the timeline of the research that they're supporting. You want to describe that research and, like I said, include the methods, but also highlight that you have the resources and the technical skills and capacity to be able to achieve those goals. So some of the questions that reviewers are going to be thinking about and you should be addressing within your plan is, what is creative about this? Remember that they want to see that you're thinking about innovative research, something that's really going to advance the discipline and move things forward. What you expect to learn. So they want to understand that you have anticipated outcomes. that you have goals you're working towards and you're trying to answer these specific questions and drive towards those. They want to understand that if you're successful, that you'll be able to actually evaluate that success. So you should have questions outlined and you should have goals and outcomes of your research that'll address those research questions. And also, you should have a plan B. If something happens and you've outlined a really kind of groundbreaking and innovative research plan, but it requires a new type of method that's never been accomplished before, but parts B and C of your research are really anchored to that first part, there should be an alternative approach. If something happens, you still have a way to accomplish parts B and C of your overall proposal. So make sure that it's feasible that you can get the work done and you've thought about how you might address some of those concerns if there might be any within the methods. You also want to use this as the intellectual merit part of the evaluation criteria. So for the reviewers, they're thinking about this research plan as an indication that you can develop research questions that are novel and innovative, that you can establish a hypothesis or objectives that you're able to test or work towards. And like I said before, that you have the knowledge, the team, the resources and support to be able to achieve that. And remember, that's not just you at the beginning of a graduate program. That's your lab, your advisor, your committee members, that's resources available at UVA, that's professional development support, everything else that the university can provide and you can leverage to be able to achieve those goals. You also want to address the potential for your research to kind of advance knowledge and its potential impact on society. So taking the research and then going towards the broader impact part of the criteria. Like I said before, you want to highlight those skills, but those skills should be relevant elsewhere as well too. So this is a great spot for a letter writer like your advisor to be able to highlight that you have the technical skills, the capacity, the resources within their lab to be able to achieve this project. That's a great way for them to advocate for you and highlight things that you might not be able to put in your 2-page research statement about the methods and the fact that the resources are there to support this research that's being proposed. And like I said from the very beginning of this slide, you do want to make sure that the scope of this project is feasible within the 2-year period. When reviewers are reading a proposal that looks like it's going to take an entire lab group 5 years to be able to complete or answer, that's actually goes against the intellectual merit review criteria, because it's an indication that you're proposing more than you're actually able to accomplish within that period, because it's more than anybody, even a lab group, could accomplish within that period.
And I'll just add, so we had a question in the chat about the page length. So yeah, the 3 pages for the personal statement and 2 pages for the research plan are the maximum. And I think most people reach that max and are struggling to stay within it, as you can guess. But yeah, you can't go beyond that even with footnotes.
And figures, everything else. And the system itself that NSF uses for your submission automatically reviews the materials that are uploaded to see if the font size is too small, the margins are too small, or you've gone over to 3 pages, and it'll automatically kick out applications that don't meet those criteria. So reference letters is something that we really try to support all applicants through by helping you feel empowered to actually coach your referees. Reference letters are something that you actually have a lot of control over if you put yourself in the position to actually support the referees and help them think about what is going to have the biggest impact for you. And when I'm working with students to support them and write letters, I am constantly asking, what should I highlight in this letter versus something I might have highlighted for a different fellowship application in the past. And I do that because your statement is going to include stories and experiences like Kelly highlighted before. As a reference letter writer, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to tell those same stories for you because the reviewers have already heard those. I want to highlight something new, something that complements the rest of your fellowship application. And we really encourage you to work with your letter writers. So as the reviewers are reading each of these individual application elements, every time they turn over a page, they're learning something new about you. Now you have kind of 3 chances to do this with your letter writers, because you have 3 that are going to be submitted on your behalf. With that, as Kelly mentioned, you can submit 5 names. And as she also noted, you'll be able to rank those. So just make sure that you request more than 3, because you don't want to be in the situation the week or the day of that deadline, finding out that one of the referees isn't able to submit their letter in time, or a family emergency happened. So make sure that you take kind of the initiative with that. Now, who do you choose? Well, because of the nature of this fellowship program, and because of what's provided to the reviewers in terms of what they're asked by NSF to evaluate, encourage you to submit or have at least 2 letters submitted on your behalf that are coming from people that have worked with you as you're doing research, if you can do that. This is going to be your current academic advisor here at UVA, and it could be somebody else from UVA, or it could be somebody from your undergraduate program. And you do want them to highlight your technical expertise, your motivation for doing the research, all those compelling stories in saying why you're a strong researcher and things we've already kind of hit on. Most of all, though, you want people that are advocates for you, that are champions, that are going to highlight how amazing you really are. And you want them to be thinking about those letters of highlighting not just your intellectual merit and your research potential, but also the application of your research, you as an individual, those broader impact pieces that are really important to highlight here. And generally, when we are reading some of these letters, we do find that a lot of academic faculty members submitting letters really do focus a whole lot on the research potential and capacity of their applicants, of the students. But sometimes they don't know the stories, the examples, your extracurricular activities, some of the volunteer things that you do, even at your university, to talk about you as a holistic individual. So those are some of those things you want to make sure that you highlight for your letter writers, to be able to talk about the broader impacts of what you do beyond your class, beyond just the research, especially if it's not necessarily an applied research discipline. Also, consider recommendations that are coming outside your primary field of study. So these might be people that have been mentors and supervisors for internships, fellowship programs, jobs, especially if you've taken time off between a bachelor's and a graduate degree and you've worked kind of in a research or a technical position where you can kind of highlight that you've had a chance to refine and actually work on some of those skills. If you've done an REU or some type of research experience beyond your bachelor's degree as a summer experience or similar, it's a great group to think about because it provides another perspective and another project that you might have been working on that your faculty member in your undergraduate group might not be familiar with. Now, we strongly encourage you to share all of your statements and an example CV. It doesn't have to be updated or resume with all of your letter writers. Just like the reviewers will be looking at your application materials, seeing your CV might remind them of something or highlight something for them, the letter writers, that they want to make sure they incorporate and champion, because they might think that it's really impressive, but maybe they forgot about it or just didn't know about it in the first place. And the reason it's nice for them to be able to see your research statement, like your advisor, they can compliment and say that, yes, we have the expertise, we have the resources to be able to do this project. Those are things that they can highlight. And then it also lets them know what stories you're telling within your statement, your personal statement, so they're not overlapping with those, but they're complementary. And just like we've highlighted, give them suggestions, give them a bulleted list, think about the stories that you can't tell, and really reflect on your experience and what you got out of those experiences and share those with your letter writers. They might not know that working in their lab was the transformative point in your academic career that led you to grad school. Tell them it was, if it was, because that'll help them really see how these different pieces fit together. Okay, so we've talked about all the different application elements. So we're going to kind of bring this back together and think about it from the reviewer's side of the process. So NSF, and this is kind of a direct quote, asks reviewers to make a holistic and comprehensive review and look at intellectual merit and broader impact in a bunch of different ways throughout the entire application. So remember, this is that application form that Kelly was talking about, which is a great place to put extra information and kind of have a short bulleted list of all of your achievements, to the statements, to the letters of recommendation. So they're looking for bits and pieces of both of these criteria throughout all of those. So for intellectual merit, we put everything up since it's going out. There we go. They're looking for that potential of the applicant. So the applicant and their proposed activities to advance understanding and knowledge within your field and across multiple fields. So with that, you want to demonstrate your intellectual ability and academic performance within the materials. And what reviewers are asked to look for specifically are things like grades, curricular courses, awards that you received, listed achievements and accomplishments, research projects and products. So that could be papers, posters, presentations. They could also be websites, blog posts, anything kind of in those spaces as products. And they are asked to look at other evidence of your potential too. And everything on this slide and the future ones that has an asterisk are specific things that reviewers are actually highlighted for them that they should be looking for. So they are asked to look at previous research experience. So that's why it's important to have that in your personal statement, but also your past letters of recommendation. Professional experience outside academia as well, if you have it. Thinking about your graduate research plan, how it's laid out. Is it clear? Is it concise? Communicated well? Does it have specific objectives that you're working towards? And they're thinking about that ability for you to be able to propose and plan that research and then conduct that research and be successful in doing so. Now, another aspect that are really good indications of your success are things like your ability to work as a team member or independently. A great thing for your letter writers to be able to highlight for them. The ability for you to be able to interpret and communicate research results. And that can come up in a bunch of different ways, from presentations to the way you actually write the research plan in this application. And then things like your willingness to take initiative, to be a leader, to be a problem solver. And really good things to think about for your personal goal statement is how you overcome obstacles, how you persist when you're met with a challenge, how you think about creative solutions to get around problems that might actually make other people stumble. For the broader impacts, as we've kind of highlighted, this is the benefit to society and advance desirable societal outcomes. So just remember and keep in mind, your individual impact and your impact on society through your research. So some examples of this, it might be investing in you is helping to achieve an increasing participation of underrepresented groups in the STEM disciplines and in engineering. Or by funding you, you might be creating opportunities for other members that might be underrepresented groups. You might be supporting undergraduate students that are interning or working in your lab. You might be going out and doing outreach or mentoring people that are in the community, working with school groups, K through 12, or undergraduate students, and involving them in some way with your research. Increasing public engagement, so going and doing outreach events, working in the community. It could be things like things that are happening on university grounds, science clubs, science policy groups, contributing to newspapers, blogs. This could be current experiences and past experiences. And then increasing collaborations. So maybe as part of your research, you need to partner with a federal agency because they have the research equipment that you need to partner with. And through your research, you're actually creating partnerships between UVA and that external group. So with all of these, as you're reflecting on kind of your experience and what you're packaging in your broader impacts, remember that we currently sit here at the end of May, but your application is not due until October. So if you feel like there are things that you can start to volunteer with, to get involved with, that you'll be able to include on your application, think about what those are now, because you can start to do that over the summer and into the fall semester, and you'll be able to incorporate it into your fellowship application. Now, there's a couple other examples that were highlighted for reviewers, and we want to hit on those a little bit. And the importance of broader impacts, this should be said, is going to vary. Like how innovative that a review panel thinks they are is going to vary between disciplines. So what might be kind of new and novel within one discipline might be something that another discipline has been doing for a while. So we just want you to keep that in mind. And the reason we say that is Kelly and I will get questions about how do I make my broader impacts or this element of my application like different from other people? And it's really hard for us to be able to actually say, oh, you should do this, because that's different than what somebody else in your field has proposed. So we just want you to keep that in mind. It's really for your broader impacts and the things that you do through your research that expand it out to societal impact. It should be something that you're really passionate about, because that's what's going to come through to the reviewers. If you think it's neat, if you're invested in it, if you think that's the best way to actually have an impact through your research. So what reviewers are really primed for in this space to look for evidence is kind of highlighted plans and contributions and achievements, like milestone type stuff within your research plan about how you're going to expand the research beyond your lab group. They're looking for past personal experiences. So if you really love engaging with K-12 students and actually taking university research and getting it into like a high school classroom, and you've done that in the past, you know, that might be something that you think about building upon, or doing something that's an expansion of that and is different, that actually leverages those skills and competencies that you already have, but does it in kind of a new way or a unique way. Prior accomplishments, so thinking about, you know, current goals, activities, what the next step of your lab group might be to expand research beyond what they've done before. Thinking about your research plan itself, really captivating the reviewer and explaining why your research is really important, has broad societal impacts from the very beginning. And then the reviewers are going to be looking for your honors, your awards, and they're thinking about the ones that you get received because of your impact, and maybe your impact just beyond academia. And then they'll look for stories within your letter writers. So this is where helping them see all the different things you've worked on, even including the stuff that was outside of what you did at the university, can be really helpful. Now, there's some other really important points that we want to highlight that kind of span both intellectual merit and broader impacts. So to highlight those for you here, thinking about proposing activities that really highlight that you have kind of creative ideas, something that's original, something that's kind of transforming concepts or an innovative new method that you're using. Thinking about how you actually propose activities that are well-reasoned, they're really justified, and the reason you're doing those in the research plan is well organized, from saying why it's important to structuring how you're going to actually do it, and making sure that's rational and it's sound when they read it. And having ways to actually measure your success. Other pieces to kind of echo things we've hit on before, but just to kind of put a fine point on it, is how qualified you are in terms of the skills and experiences that you bring to the research project, as well as a team in the university or other organizations that you're working with to help you gain the additional skills you'll need to be successful. So this might be where your letter writer does highlight, you know, the ways that the entire group can support and make you achieve or help you kind of achieve these goals, because there's the skills and capacity that you'll be trained on to achieve this. And then if there are adequate resources, that's something that's really good for the PI to kind of highlight, because otherwise it would take up room within your research plan.
Okay, so to get back to the question of whether you should apply now or next year, for some of you, you're heading into your second year, so this is the time to apply. You don't have any other opportunities after this year. So going into your second year, definitely apply this year. If you are not going into your Is that the same slide? Sorry, I didn't see you change it. I got thrown off. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, go to the next one. Thanks, Sam. So for those of you starting UVA in fall 2023, so this fall, you have the option of applying in your first year or your second year. So I want to emphasize that you are being judged against other people in your year. So you're not going to be applying as a first year, being judged against a second year. And of course, the second years will get all of the funding because their projects are much more developed, they have more experience. That's not the case. You're going to be judged against other first years, or if you're a second year, other second years. If you're an undergrad, other undergrads. So don't worry about that. You do want to apply this year as a first year if you have extensive research experience already and have things to show for that experience, like publications or conference presentations. If you're already involved or have a plan for getting involved in UVA organizations, or you have a ton of experience with organizations at your undergrad institution. If you already have someone or will have someone by October to provide guidance on your research plan. So if you already have a faculty member that you can work with, whether that's an advisor, a loud rotation PI, or your DGS, or somebody that you know your work is similar to, and they can be a mentor to you, and a strong letter writer. Or, of course, like I said before, if you're enrolled in graduate courses this summer, that will be on your transcripts. Then you definitely want to apply this year because you won't be eligible next year. That said, apply next year if you anticipate a publication within the next year, or need time to strengthen your relationship with a research advisor, or want to get more involved so that you can boost your broader impacts or the evidence of your ability to create those broader impacts. Now, a lot of people hear this advice and think, well, definitely I'll be stronger in my second year, so I should just wait. And we want to try to encourage you not to think like that. Try to think about all of the experience that you have and how you can frame it to show just how much you've done already. There's always a feeling that you haven't done enough or that you could be doing more, but that's not a reason to wait until your second year to apply. A lot of the competition is easier in the first year because everybody's having that thought. I'll apply in my second year because I'll have a lot more experience. Well, that means that there's a lot more second year applicants, so the pool is a lot more competitive. So there's good reason to apply your first year if you're able to. And because we want you all to apply and we want you all to win these awards, we have a lot of support here with PhD Plus and at UVA in general. So if you go to the PhD Plus website, if you scroll down, you'll see this graphic at the top of the slide here. And if you click on that, it'll bring you to a page that has all of the stuff we have going on over the summer and into the fall to offer that support. So you can see, we're going to talk about these in a second, but the different workshops we have, and then the different one-on-one consultations we do. And then Sam just put in the chat this file that is our timeline. So this kind of lays out all of the steps for you to start to learn about the GRFP a bit more and start to put together your applications so that you get it done in a timely manner rather than waiting till the last minute. So you can use that as a guide, and we have the kind of support that we offer built in there so you know when to take advantage of different things. Okay, so what are the things that PhD Plus is doing? Well, we have next up our fellowship application workshop series. So this last year we did specific workshops for the GRFP personal statement and research statement, all of that stuff. But this year we're actually broadening it out so that this workshop series applies to any fellowship that you're applying for. We strongly encourage you to attend this if you're applying for the GRFP, because this is going to be the kind of stepping stones to help you get those materials drafted and get feedback on them. But this is going to be useful no matter what fellowship you're applying for. So if you've just found out that you're not eligible for the GRFP, this can still be useful to you for any fellowship. We also have a one-day boot camp in August, which if you're unable to attend the fellowship application workshop series, this is basically a very condensed version of that specific to the GRFP. So that will give you kind of the same content, but in a lot more quick format, and won't give you those stepping stones to get your application drafted. But it's there if you're not able to attend.
And if you enroll in the fellowship application workshop series this summer, but for some reason you're unable to make one of those dates, this is a good way to make sure you get the information that we actually shared during that session. Or if you just want a refresher because it's a busy summer, it's a good way to kind of come back, center again, think about everything that you're seeing through the lens of just the GRFP, and kind of have that really focused conversation there.
Yeah, and the fellowship application workshop series is going to be virtual, but that boot camp, I believe, is going to be in person. So there will be snacks. So if you are into that, then please come. And then in the fall, we'll have a series of mini writing retreats, which is basically just a quiet time for you to come and work on your application materials with other people who are also working on their application materials. And Sam will be there to answer questions or look at drafts. We're also doing virtual office hours. So these are just drop-in sessions. Sam will be on Zoom. You can drop in and ask a question. And then we have our big event, which people love, and we hope you can take part in this, but the application panel review speed dating, which is basically once you have a full draft of your application, you'll submit it to us and we will have reviewers read it, and then we will do a panel for you. So you'll get feedback from people who have either served as GRFP reviewers in the past, or students who've won the award in the past who are acting as if they're on the review panel. And it's a really great way to get feedback on your application materials, to polish them up so that you know how are they coming across to other people, what are the things that stand out, am I hitting those review criteria the way that I need to. So watch for that and make sure you plan that into your kind of drafting schedule.
And for that event, we'll ask you to submit your materials to us a little less than a week before the event when we're actually hosting it. So it's actually kind of a nice period to like submit your materials as they stand that day, step away from it for a weekend. And in that moment, we're trying to read through all of them so we can give you feedback the next week. But it lets you come back kind of recentered and with fresh eyes and have all of these different perspectives on, yep, you're hitting all of these things right, but you might want to tweak this. Or you can ask us, I submitted something, it's 2 pages and an extra paragraph and a half. Where can I cut? You know, and we can give you that type of feedback at that stage.
Yeah, and Sam just put the registration form for the fellowship workshop series in the chat in case you haven't registered for that and want to attend. There's
some additional resources out there as well. And if you type in GRFP to Google, you'll have a million different things pop up. These are some of the ones that we've kind of collated over the last couple of years, including last year's solicitation. If you want to get kind of a jump start, it's solicitations are generally written by lawyers more than they are anyone else. So it's a little dense and not necessarily the easiest read, but it's really good to go through it. And it's got a lot of sections that are actually resources. So we talked earlier about the different subdisciplines, you know, thinking about the review criteria and what's in there and the application elements. It's good to be able to go in there and actually read it. You also want to go to the GRFP website for 2 other things in addition to the eligibility link that we shared earlier. One is the fact that they have all the 2020 webinars, the overview presentations, templates for your research plan and your personal statement there. They have kind of informational slides, session transcripts, all those kinds of things online. And they also have a full site that's devoted to frequently asked questions, not just eligibility, but all other things about the program itself. And then there's a couple blogs and websites out there that include other advice, you know, from past applicants, previous awarded material, stuff like that. And this is another time as we should probably stop and say, and when you go to our website, phdplus.virginia.edu, you'll also see that we have a link to a CoLab site with a lot of helpful resources and material, example past applications, stuff like that, you can get access to. And you'll see that we leverage those through some of these workshop series.
Yeah, and that page is currently being updated. So if you go there today, next week it might be different. So just keep that in mind.
So with that, we'll take a couple questions, and we can stay online a little bit past 4:30 as well too to answer any others. We're going to do that. I'm going to put up the rest of the information here because we do want to highlight something. That is, Kelly and I are here to support you, but we're only kind of 2 members of your team. Think about this whole team of people that's here to support you, your advisors, your lab mates, current and past fellows, as Kelly mentioned. They're going to be involved in supporting you this year as well. There's a whole group of people here at UVA that are really dedicated to helping you be successful.
Yeah, so if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. If you have to hop off, thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at future events and working with you on your applications. Yogi's question. So I messaged Yogi directly to answer this, but for those of you in the BIMS program, this is one of those programs that we've had questions about in the past, that those research rotations might be turning up on your transcript. So what you want to do is look at your transcript and see if the summer research rotation is listed on there. That might mean that you were only eligible to apply in your first year and are no longer eligible if you're heading into your second year. But if there's any question about that, or if you don't know how to interpret that transcript, you can reach out to us and we can help.
If you, I think another question coming in, but before everybody hops off, if you have a question that's a little bit that you don't want to be recorded, but you'd like to ask us today, we will stay after. We can turn off the recording and address some of those and even hop into a breakout room if that's helpful.
Yeah, so do you have any information about how many applicants there usually are? I forget the numbers. Sam, do you remember?
I don't off the top of my head. There are quite a few. I say that I wouldn't let that actually push you away from applying because UVA students really do have some really strong, compelling applications. So regardless of how many nationally there are, you have some amazing resources here to help you be more successful than the average applicant.
You know when the deadline is for engineering?
We don't for 2023 because they haven't announced it yet, but looking back at past timelines, I do believe that it was kind of, it's always the middle-ish of October. And I think for engineering, it's usually kind of the middle to the latter end of the week, if I'm remembering correctly.
Questions? We'll make sure everyone hears when the solicitation comes out so you can see as soon as we know when your deadline is.
Not seeing any other questions coming at the chat at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording and stop sharing. And anybody else who would like to stick around and ask us questions, we'll welcome you to do so.